All right. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. We have another time zone represented. Laura Gass Weaver is from Austin, Texas. Thank you for being here. We've got Anne and Pastor Hughes and myself, Rabbi Jonathan Freirish, here at the Buffalo History Museum in Western New York. We've got Allison Hyde is probably situated in Orchard Park, not far away, as is Tay, who's also on and not on video. Oh, there's Tay. Wonderful. And we have Marty Reich from who was our East Coast representative from in view of the Hudson River. So welcome everyone to Finding Freedom Together. This is session 4 of 5, and we are looking at Timothy Snyder's On Freedom. And this week is very, very relevant to life as we live it right now. It's almost, the chapter from the book is seriously not current enough.
It's completely,
So I just want to welcome everybody to Finding Freedom Together, which is sponsored by Humanities New York, which has graciously provided us a grant for this program, and also co-sponsored by the Buffalo History Museum, where we are, and supported by Pastor Hughes and myself. So we are thrilled. Pastor Hughes is the senior pastor at Orchard Park Presbyterian Church, and I am a rabbi who runs Open Door Judaism and co-runs Accomplices for Justice here in Buffalo. Our topic today: how important is factuality for freedom? That is, as Stephen Colbert once said back when he was not as popular, but much funnier, truthiness. And so we're going to start quickly with a quote from the book, which I think is pretty essential to where we are. So on page 169, it says, "In the struggle between you and the world," says Kafka, "take the side of the world. Freedom is not negative," continues Timothy Snyder, "not a matter of our breaking what is around us. Freedom is not against the world, is not us against the world, but us within the world, knowing it and changing it. Freedom involves turning restraints into possibilities, a habit that can save our species. Our kind of life arose within a set of restraints and began with fusion inside stars confined by gravity." So I think it's really important. Freedom is not negative, not a matter of breaking what is around us. Freedom is not us against the world, but us within the world, knowing it and changing it. So when I picked this out, Pastor Hughes, you said yes. Why? Why did you think this was key?
Because it reminded me of something that Malcolm X said.
Excellent. That's exactly this is where we want to go. We're starting with the parallel.
It reminded me of something that Malcolm X said when he said, he was preaching. Malcolm X was a preacher. And so in his sermon, he said, he quoted an anecdote that comes from the Deep South, where it says, "You cannot keep a dog in a ditch without getting mud on yourself." And what he was saying was that oppression oppresses everybody, even the oppressor. Okay. Evil binds everybody, even the evil that you do to other people, it binds you to that. And so if we are going to fight for freedom, Malcolm X says, then we all have to fight for freedom. If we're going to overthrow an oppressor, then we all have to overthrow an oppressor. This is not an us against them. This is us getting out of it. It's us. We have to, because we're all in it. And to distance ourselves to the tendency, especially for the oppressor, to distance themselves from the oppressed is what keeps the cycle of oppression going. Even if you say, well, that's not me, I'm not this, I'm not that, I didn't own slaves, my ancestors didn't own slaves, I don't see color, I don't, What matters is what you're doing is you're distancing yourself from the situation that is from a reality, and that makes it reinforces that reality because you're not doing anything to fix it.
Well, and we exist right now in a situation where we're constantly confronting people who are attempting to impose their will on reality,
Right.
as opposed to grappling with reality as it is.
As it is.
You know, and Kafka, of course, is an interesting person to quote here because Kafka is constantly grappling. He has this image of a governmental reality restraining all of us, and that it's oppressive, right? So and here, I mean, just looking at the news today, right? We have a judge finally saying, "Hey, dismantling USAID is against the law.
Right, you can't do
it's
that.
It's unconstitutional
to do
that." Because what we see from the tech bros, as embodied in the head tech bro at the moment, the richest person in the world, or maybe not so much anymore, is a denial of restraint at all.
Right.
Or more importantly, an assertion of restraint on everyone else, which is going back to your Malcolm X quote, as if doing so doesn't bind us all.
Exactly.
And as if it's possible to get rid of the things that actually buoyed and supported the creation of wealth, and get rid of those and still be in power.
Right.
Right. Get rid of the infrastructure and still have satellites. Get rid of the infrastructure and still have roads.
Right.
As if, you know, at the heart of the Musk empire is not a whole lot of public subsidy. I have this fundamental question, though, that I think really is at the heart of my struggle right now. We live in a fact-questioning world constantly, right? The world right now is, we are at war over what's actually happening. And Snyder has laid it out quite clearly that that's a fundamental problem to us being free. If I want to be free, I need to step on things to move. And I need to, well, you and I need to agree what those things are.
Right.
If we disagree about whether or not there are rocks in the stream, how we're crossing
the stream, right?
One of us is going to trip.
You're preaching now.
So this seems self-evident, I would bet, to everyone who's here today, to Anne here in person and everybody on the call. This seems basic. We use science to understand the world, and therefore we use a value system that we built together to try to go through the world using science as those stepping stones.
Right.
Right. When Maimonides, a medieval Jewish scholar, said, if science ever disproves the narrative of Scripture, the way the world was created in Genesis, we read Genesis metaphorically. Because science is not, Scripture is not there to tell us the way the world is. It's there to tell us how to live in the world. Right. Described by science. Right. So,
oh, that's powerful. God, I wish I could write that down.
It's okay. I'll say it again.
Good.
So here's the problem. How do I have this conversation with somebody who has decided that Scripture describes the world? How do I have this conversation with somebody who has decided that the world is the way it is described at Amalgara? Who has bought into the idea that the 2020 election was stolen, which is now reality for many people. Yeah. And it's going to be written in history. We have, just this week, the Defense Department started exercising historical records of the code talkers in World War II, right? The Comanche and Apache soldiers who made Iwo Jima happen. And women soldiers.
And black soldiers.
Tay, you wanted to say something? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're erasing, they're purging.
So what do we do? because I'm wanting to start the conversation with people who are not in this room with us. This is my fundamental question. How do we do that?
Well, one thing we can't do is what Democrats and liberals have done for generations, is present the facts from a place of, or use the facts as a weapon to make a point. Because this is what we do. When we see that people are deluded, or delulu, as Gen Z says these days, when we see that people are delulu, the first thing that a liberal or a Democrat will do is to say, no, you're delulu. Here is the facts. And what that, because we think that surely if we present them with the facts, if we show them, right, that this is the way it actually is, that they will somehow be changed and they will somehow elicit a shift. And they'll say, wow, I didn't know that. And then, we say, well, the more you know, and knowing is half the battle. And then we go hold hands. And that's not what has happened.
It's,
Now, can I say something?
please.
What has happened is that the Democrats, as Pastor Hughes says, have had a way of making people feel that they are not being heard
Right.
and that they are being spoken down to.
Right.
We, the liberals, probably really feel that way about a large part of this population, but that is
Yep.
not the way to change their votes.
That's right.
And what happened in 2024 is the other side of the man I will not name.
You can say his name.
Say his name.
We're not gonna give him that power.
It's our podcast.
It went to them and said, I'm with you. Now, is there going to be any buyer's remorse on the part of the large part of this country? I don't know. I don't believe that there's any way that you can change anything right now that doesn't involve the courts and the media. I think it is the only two things the Democrats will try. Maybe they will find somebody. But right now, the only two hopes I think we have in this country, and even Justice Roberts did something today that is important. But the courts, all of them, the appellate courts all the way to the Supreme Court, which I have my doubts about, and the media. I don't know, just to throw this in because you should all know it, if you saw CBS's 60 Minutes, there was an interracial children of color orchestra. Did you see it? Tay is not, you have to unmute her. She's not.
They're just thumbs up in.
Oh, but she's muted. Okay, all right. Anyway, this orchestra was black, brown, yellow children who are excellent musicians, and they've been playing together. And Scott Pelley did the story. They're so good that they were contacted by the Marine Corps band to do a joint concert, except Trump told the Marine Corps band they could not do this. Now,
This
it's
is where we are now. Hold on one sec. I want to say welcome to Elizabeth, who is a fellow Stuyvesant person. So we are really truly diversified in age, stage, and origin, except for the fact that some of us went to the same high school. So thank you for being here. But I think
I just want to tell you the good part of the ending of this story is that several people in the Marine Corps band, and that is not just Marine Corps, it's Navy, it's Air Force, it's Army musicians, all paid their way. And CBS paid the way for these young, diversified musicians to have a concert, to come to a place and have a concert together.
Oh, man.
So
wait, Scott Pelley's
this is
final line was to these children. You were originally going to have a concert that was going to be seen by hundreds, and now you are going to be seen by millions. Now, it's a pretty good story, but a bad story.
No,
Yeah.
actually, it's a very important.
relevant.
It's very relevant because one of the truth issues that we're facing right now is the question of merit and expertise, right? So we've talked at some length about the death of DEI.
Mm-hmm.
And the death knell of DEI is really because is the popular accusation that it wasn't acknowledging merit. And the irony, of course, is this is at the same time as people are making the accusation, are dismantling the systems of expertise upon which we rely.
Exactly.
So what is true here, of course, is that, yes, there is a problem with the way we have implemented affirmative action over the last 60 years. And affirmative action being started during the Kennedy administration, even as a different name, but those and developed into DEI.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem of its implementation is not that it wasn't focused on merit. And so here is if we're going to talk about one of the things that Democrats miss, and Holly, I'll get to your comment in a second. I saw it, I just see it in the chat. We need to figure out how to present the nuance and the truth of an argument and accept, and Holly, and both Marty, Mom, and Holly, you are correct. You can't do it by, and Pastor Hughes, we can't do it by saying, you're wrong, listen to me, here's
Right.
what's right.
Right.
Right? We have to start by saying, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as you know, I don't get to tell somebody that the thing that they're feeling isn't true.
Right. Right.
You know, so Holly said, while that is true, you can't demean to reach people. But what is also true is that these folks are wedded to the president and his lies. They are part of their identity. So it is very difficult for them to give that up. They can be presented with facts, with reality, and they still will see the version of the world that is not reality and still believe it is reality. And if they are truly challenged, they move the goalposts over. So it is a very complicated challenge. And the other point is that there are different aspects of these believers. Some are truly drinking the lies, and they are unfortunately many who are simply with trashing who isn't them. They want power and money, and they don't care who gets hurt. So they don't care until it personally affects them and only them. True, we are, you know, part of the real challenge is the presentation of the alternate worldview that people get attached to. This, in fact, Timothy Snyder addresses with what we deal with in terms of the big lie. And he does a quick history on that. So this is on page 177. I will share, and you can look at that because I think it will help us move us along.
Not up on the screen.
I'm getting it there. You know, it's amazing. I'm still being held to higher standards by my parents.
You know, you usually do things more efficiently, that's all.
Wow.
Wow.
My own standards.
I love it.
Based it on my own petard.
Nice.
In George Orwell's 1984, the backdrop is a world war. The protagonist's homeland, Oceania, suddenly changes from being allied with East Asia against Eurasia, being allied with Eurasia against East Asia. No one was supposed to take notice. Orwell was recalling the traumatic acrobatics of a Stalinist line that built collective conformity from wrecked consciences. Stalinism revealed the human ability to have faith in an entity whose utterance had no fixed content, followed no rules of evidence, and were often mutually contradictory. People were capable of altering their views completely and of acting as though they had never changed and of preparing to change them again in the near future. Orwell invented a name for it, doublethink. You want to continue, Pastor?
Stalinism might seem like an exotic faith of a distant past, but in 21st century Russia, too, people can follow a changing line. Yesterday, a war against our brothers, the Ukrainians, was unthinkable. Today, a war against our enemies, the Ukrainians, is inevitable.
Dissidents rejected the big lie and valorized local everyday truths. Their central labor in the communist bloc was the chronicle, the list of specific details about human suffering and injustice. Throughout the communist world, those in opposition labored to record the names of those sent to psychiatric prison or to the gulag. Then they themselves were sent
Yes.
to psychiatric prison or to the gulag, but the recording was the important thing.
Mhm.
Pastor?
Keep going.
Yeah.
These courageous people understood the facts were a condition of freedom and that the facts would not record themselves. Facts need us and we need them.
For the Nazis, it was not that the party was always right, but that the Jews were always wrong. The Jews were the source of capitalism and communism, of Christianity, of law, the state, modern physics, technological solutions to scarcity, anything that got in the way of the racial struggle. In this grand fiction, Jews hindered the German race by seducing the women, corrupting the men, kidnapping the babies, and infecting the mind.
That sounds very familiar. If I may, do you
Please.
want to keep going or shall can I?
Well, the big deal here is that the big lie is part of this, and this was not the exact quote, but
Sorry.
this is no, it's fine. But the final paragraph here is stated as a proposition like these, a big lie can seem absurd, but it is precisely the lie's titanic scope, as Hitler himself said, that makes it successful. In Mein Kampf, Hitler explained the public relations strategy that others have since followed. Tell a lie so enormous that your followers cannot imagine that you would deceive them on such a scale. Because of the lie's very grandeur, people are psychically overinvested when they accept it, and they cannot get out without pain. A big lie is an untruth that is too big to fail.
Yep.
And the big deal on this, of course, is when you do something terrible in the name of a big lie that justified the terribleness of it, we can't undo the big lie because we're stuck with the justification for doing something terrible.
Mhm.
And that is what's going on, as Holly had pointed out. And Holly, you said the skillfulness of the manipulation and the flooding of the zone with those manipulations is powerful. Right. We're attempting to field it all. So debunking it all is very difficult. But this goes back to the question that we had looked at, which is, if people are so bought into the lie, right? We have an entire party, more than nearly half of our country, who now have to believe, because of the way they've behaved.
They have to justify what they're doing now,
right?
Even though they know it's off the wall, they know it is insane, but they have to continue the lie because it's already been told and they bought into it.
So what do we do about that?
There's one question that you're not, or maybe Timothy Snyder does, but we have a culture of enablement, and that is what's going on right now. Trump is enabled. He's enabled by an entire Congress and Senate. So why are they there doing that? Why are they not? Why are they listening to the lie? And it's only because they don't want to lose their jobs?
I want to push back on that. I don't think that Congress is enabling Trump. I think Congress doesn't know what to do. They just don't know what to do because Trump
is
doing. He's overloading us with stimulus. So because we have so much stimuli, it's the paralysis. What's it called? The paralysis of
analysis paralysis.
Analysis paralysis. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to which do we attack first, right? Because they're so invested in doing things according to protocol. There's a way that you do things. There's a way that you present a bill. There's a way that you filibuster a bill. There's a process, and most politicians understand that process. When you become part of the political leadership, you sort of line yourself up with that process. Hey, if you want to get this bill passed, you have to do it this way. Talk to these people. These are the people you want to woo. These are the people that are going to oppose you. You got to figure out a way to navigate. That's the game. That's politics. And so what Trump is doing is not the game. It's not the politics game. What he's doing is not according to the normal protocol. This is not what most presidents or any kind of political leader does. And so Congress, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, nobody knows how to handle that because he's not following the rules. And that's the very reason why he was elected, because he did exactly what he said he would do. He said he was going to go in there, he was going to drain the swamp, he was going to fix the government, he was gonna find this money that the government's been taking from the American people, and he's gonna do what he's gonna do it by any means necessary, and he's doing it, and he's stepping on all of the things that we supposedly hold dear, the Constitution, the amendments, all of these things. He doesn't care because that's exactly what he said he would do. And so now, how do we deal with that? Nobody knows. They're trying to figure it out.
I think there were
Yeah.
ways that the Congress and the Senate could have fought him and chose not to for their own selfish and venal selves,
Right,
because
but
they
but
are threatened with all
they
kind.
were craven before this,
Well, yeah,
right?
they
So
were.
this, you know, their
Yes, they were, but
their self-interest was
they
self-evident.
didn't impeach him, and they could have.
No, they did impeach him.
No,
I
the
mean, they
Senate-
didn't find him guilty.
The Senate didn't convict him,
Right,
right? The Senate didn't convict him when it was clear.
right.
You know, what the irony that we are facing right now is that Senator McConnell seems to be the reasonable one when he is in fact the source of all of
Most
this,
of all of it.
right?
It was one
Exactly.
vote. It was one vote. So
Yeah.
we're in a fix is what we're in right
We are
now.
in a fix, but I am focused on the people part of the fix
Hmm.
because the politicians will follow if the people lead. Right? This is not new. This is a Lincoln
How are you gonna
saying
get
you
the
can't
people
do
to vote?
anything if there's not political. No, there's more than voting. This politics as a voting is politics as a spectator sport. And
Yep.
we need to stop that.
Yep.
Right?
It's more than just voting.
You know, I know Tay and Barbara and Allison are part of regular conversations with our elected representatives because we need to hold them accountable all the time, not just when the ballot box is available. We need to hold them accountable, not just every 2 years, but every 2 weeks.
Mm.
And but we in this virtual room, physical and virtual room, need to figure out how to take the things that we care about and that we're expressing so clearly here and bring them to our leaders. We need to, because there is a Friends Committee, right? Because we have a number of Quakers here in the room, or as we like to say, some of my best Jews are friends. Thank you. I'll be here for another couple of minutes. That committee is regularly getting out there and meeting with their representatives. We need to all do that. We need to expand that. And we need to take these issues about freedom and bring them in as a rubric to our elected leaders as well. Because what they're doing is, as all of you have said, to a certain extent, is capitulating on our freedom.
Mhm.
They're capitulating on things that are making us less free. When people are allowed to lie in public, we are less free.
Mhm.
When we accept the breaking down of fundamental needs in our society, like a free press, we are less free.
Mhm.
Because the people holding people accountable for truth are not doing so. So there are a number of new media that we need to support, not just TikTok, but actual, which I need to support. But, you know, so you need to, if you have found a good source, right? I followed Paul Krugman, for example, from the New York Times to Substack. And there are dozens of great Substack publications that we can support.
So I think in answer to the question, what do we do? How do we deal with it? What I hear you saying, Jonathan, and what I've heard other people say is that we need to intensify our involvement in the political process. We need to expand our understanding of what being involved in the political process means. And going back to the Timothy Snyder book, he talks about the lie. Now, the lie is that our vote counts. Okay. That's the lie.
What do you mean?
It's a lie because it's more than just our vote. Okay. You talk about, let's go back in time. Let's go back to the 60s, the civil rights movement. Okay. People say that the 1964 Civil Rights, or the Voting Rights Act, right? The Voting Rights Act in 64 and the Civil Rights Act in 65, right? These are landmark cases that went all the way to the Supreme Court and it got approved. But and so we now had the right to vote. But we don't talk about the struggles and the political pressure that the civil rights movement put on the government. We don't talk about the sit-ins and the walkouts and all of these things, the boycotts. That was the political process as well. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. And that is exactly what those sit-ins were doing, because they disrupted the status quo. They disrupted the businesses, which disrupted the money, which now everyone's going to their local leader and saying, hey, what are we going to do about these Negroes? And then they finally said, well, what do you want, Negroes? And the Negroes said, we want to be able to sit here and eat. And they said, well, we're going to have to pass a law for that. And they said, well, get to writing, or we're going to keep marching. And so that's part of the political process. And I think we have forgotten that. And so now we get caught up in just voting. And we say, well, I'm going to vote because I'm going to want my voice to be heard, which is great. And it's true. We ought to vote, but that's not our only voice. And so what I hear you saying is that we need to get more intensive about our political involvement and not just hold our elected officials accountable when it's campaign time, but hold them accountable right now before there's a campaign time, during and after.
Absolutely. And so I was listening to Ezra Klein talk to a major Democratic pollster today. And so this is Ezra Klein show is on the New York Times, and he's talking to a guy who has analyzed all of the ways in which the 2024 campaign failed. And some of the things are things that we've already mentioned, right? That the Democrats talk down to everybody. The Democrats argue by saying, how come you don't accept the truth that is mine? And which is, again, not a good way to engage people.
Right.
And that Democrats have lost young men entirely, that young people are not ready to vote for liberals. But on top of all of this, there is not a consensus out there. People are calling themselves moderates because they are extremes on two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They are extremely anti-immigrant and extremely pro legalized drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore they count as a moderate,
right,
is one of the examples they gave. So figuring out how to come together around issues to assert influence will require us doing this conversational building first, because there is no automatic understanding that all of us are going to agree. We have to start with the automatic understanding that all of us want to live better. It's why I think this freedom book is a good starting place, because when we say, hey, how free are you? And somebody says, well, I'm free to own a gun. And then we counter and we say, okay, what if we define freedom as freedom to live longer?
Right.
Or freedom to not have medical bills.
Right. Because that's something that matters to everybody.
Elizabeth, you want to say something?
Unmute.
Thank you.
There we go.
I think so. Thank you for doing this conversation, and thank you for letting me chip in a little bit here. I'm really excited about it. I like Timothy Snyder's writing. I haven't gotten my copy of On Freedom yet, but I do know something about the arguments in the book. And I love this idea of using freedom as a value that we can share with people who have somewhat different politics than us, but that it's a way of building this kind of new movement out of this sort of shattered democratic liberal politics. And I love the idea that you were saying about how our sense of orientation to this spectrum of political behavior is sort of been scrambled a little bit, like what you were just talking about how somebody might be pro legalization of drugs, but also very conservative on immigration. And so there's this new kind of constellation of like that's counterintuitive, right? If you're thinking about what liberalism meant in the 1970s or 80s or something like that, you would not expect that combination. But things have kind of changed. And I'm just gonna kind of chip in a little bit. What were a couple of other things? I love the idea of just rebuilding from the idea that we need to make community and have conversations and reach out and join together with people in some really basic way. I've also kind of been thinking about the arguments that were made by Robert Putnam in the book called Bowling Alone about sort of the degradation of civil organizations and how people don't really belong to clubs like they did in the middle of the 20th century, sort of at the height of the American century. And it's like this very old theme in American culture going back to like de Tocqueville talking about you get a few Americans together and they make a club and they do something. They build a library, they build a free library, or they do a this or they do a that, and that isn't really the way that Europe worked. And so de Tocqueville was like, it's pretty amazing. And it's one of the things that people measure healthy democracies by is the strength of their civil society. And it's like the movement of public conversations into online spaces, which appear to be public, but are proprietary digital platforms. And look at my hands are kind of glowing because of the sunlight that's streaming in the window over here. It also kind of scrambles our sense of like, what is public sphere and what is public speech and how do we connect with each other? Because honestly, I've been looking at articles recently on anti-Semitism and the discussion of like what was going on the campuses, the college campuses. And I see this kind of language that protesters are using or imagery, and I didn't see it. I'm only reading reports about it, right? But I think these are people who grow up on the internet where people have cultivated themselves to speak with a kind of harshness that is not the way that protest movements were in past decades, that they have to assert themselves in this radical way through very harsh speech because I think they think they're not going to be heard or understood, or I'm not really sure.
Well, because they weren't heard or understood, right? I mean, that was the whole point.
And I mean, when we get into this place where we're not hearing and we're escalating our, anyway, I don't want to go down that road because it's very, very complicated. But I'm looking at what is this movement that needs to come together right now, and I see when Robert Putnam gives his talks and he turns to the young people and he's like, "It's on you." But it's not only on the young people. I see so many people middle-aged and more who are taking a really like strong stance in the face of what's going on right now with this kind of authoritarianism and destruction of democratic institutions, because we didn't grow up with only Trump as president, right? We were not children in 2016. We saw many decades before that. We know our history. Trump doesn't know history, right? But we know our history. And we at least some of us sort of know our history, right? And we are learning our history as we go, reading, things from people like Timothy Snyder and so on. I'm sorry that I'm talking so much, but I'm so excited about this. I'm sorry. I'm so excited to connect with people around these things, right? Because we're so affronted. Our spines have gone straight out of anger, right? And now we're all like, in our middle ages and beyond, and we're like, oh shit, like now I have to go what?
Right.
March with these people in the street? Like that's a lot, but we're doing whatever the organizing is that we can do and connecting with people, making that fabric strong again. And I'm doing a reading group myself, and the invitation is to meet people where they're at so that they can take the action in their lives that is appropriate to the context that they live in. But we come together and we don't all need to do the same things, but we do need to talk about the values that we share, like freedom. Anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you so much.
She did it. You did it.
No, and think of this group as an attempt to do something new in that regard, right? Because here we are, not co-located in the same location, but co-located by intention, co-located by, co-affiliated, associated by the desire to do something differently and to make a difference differently. And we lack as a society time to do this because we all have to work so hard,
Yeah,
right? So the economic pressures on society in the 1960s, it was possible even for an African American working in Atlanta or Birmingham to support a family on one income, barely, so that one member of that family could actually do activism.
you're exactly right. I'm glad you mentioned that. Again, I have another memory from my childhood, living with my mom, and I live with her parents on a farm in Paulding County, Georgia, 45 minutes west of Atlanta. And they told us stories how my grandfather would go to work, and my grandmother was one of the first Black nurses in a county hospital. And when they were marching and rallying, when Dr. King would call up people, hey, we're going to Selma, or hey, we're going to Jacksonville, or hey, we're going to Nashville, my grandfather would he would go to his supervisor and say, I am going to march with Dr. King. Can I have 3 days? And my grandmother would say, okay, she'd go to her supervisor and say, I need extra hours.
Mhm.
I need extra hours. And they were able to do that. We can't do that now. It's
No.
okay. It's very difficult to
No.
do that now.
So
I mean, I would love to. There's a big rally coming up on the 5th of April. I keep hearing about. It's going to be huge. I don't think I can go. I can't afford to go.
well, and,
So,
and this is exactly the case,
Right.
right? And there is even a difference in 2024 between how many of us are willing to make that sacrifice to
Right.
get out, and between 2017,
Right.
right? So in January 2017,
Yeah.
the mall was filled. Now, that's not to say that there isn't still a ton of things going on, an amazing amount of activism, because
Mhm.
again, everyone is attempting to respond to the everyone, everything, everywhere, all at once phenomenon that we're facing. So there is a ton of stuff going on, town hall meetings being disrupted, Republicans not being able to hold town hall
Right.
meetings, people flooding
Phone lines,
senators'
yeah.
phone lines. So there is a response. So what's my lane in this? What's Pastor Hughes and our lane in this is how do we turn that disparate thing into something that has some sort of spiritual, soulful, intellectual cohesion? How do we behave in a way that says my freedom is connected to yours, that your freedom to factuality is also connected to mine?
This is what Malcolm X said. They asked him the same question. Malcolm X came back from Mecca. He distanced himself from the Nation of Islam. He started the organization of Afro-American Unity, and he was at Cambridge. No, he was at Boston University, and they asked him, now that you are no longer associated with the Black Muslims who were public enemy number one at the time, are you still dedicated to the cause of freedom? He said, yes. And they said, well, what's the difference between now and then? And he said, now I understand that my freedom is as important, it is tied up with your freedom.
Mm.
He said that. He said, I can't begin to talk to you about my freedom if you don't understand how my freedom affects your freedom. And so we have to, and so he said, this one, he made the famous quote, I stand with anybody who stands with me. And I will fight for anybody who fights with me, because we are all fighting the same system. And the way that you get that is you organize. So they all like, what do you do? Organize, right? Organize. So you have the students that are protesting, they're rallying, you have people who are angry, and you have people who are aggressive, and everything everywhere all at once kind of thing. Well, how do? You organize them. You try to find the thing that binds us all together, like what we're doing right now, because we all have different opinions about different things. But there has to be something that we can all come together on.
Well, and what people came together about in this last election was the cost of eggs,
Yeah.
right? Was inflation, was a consistent sense that the Biden administration, that Vice President Harris, that the Democrats in general were not hearing how crappy things felt.
Mm.
You know, I had a conversation when I was doing phone banking with somebody who said, the price of gas. I said, oh, I get it. It feels like gas is expensive. And I said, but let me see if I remember. Here's what I thought I was paying for gas in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I paid for gas yesterday. I said, does it seem that different? Because it seems pretty close to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it is, again, this acknowledgement that our feelings matter.
Yeah.
And I am terrible at this. I often will turn to my better half at the end of the day and say, I feel tired. What have I done? I don't deserve to feel tired.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is if this is an instinct, an intuitive sense for me that my feelings aren't justified, we are doing that to each other everywhere.
Right.
And so our task, therefore, is if we're going to take this conversation into an action, part of it is getting people who are not the ones who show up all the time to feel like they're going to get heard here.
Mm-hmm.
And that means transcending place and location, because, here in North Buffalo, we are surrounded by sort of a liberal enclave. One of our sponsors, Adam Perry, talked about, our coming mayoral election here in Buffalo. And, that it's very likely that if we have a unopposed Black candidate in the Democratic primary, that Black candidate will almost automatically win.
Yeah.
And that therefore that Black candidate will almost automatically win the mayoral election as well, if they're the Black Democrat. That's an astounding thing to think about in a region that also has elected some pretty reactionary conservative people, not from the city of Buffalo. Like, the region isn't that liberal,
Mm-hmm.
but the city is. The city that people live over.
And that's the case in most states in the union. I've noticed that. You even here, New York State is, and I'm not from here, I'm from Georgia, but I know that New York State is a Democratic state, but I live in Orchard Park, and Orchard Park is very, very conservative.
It's only the cities.
It's only the major cities. Right. We'd be red. Exactly.
And so Holly raises one more point that I think is important to connect here, right? We have different feelings, but the facts are the same.
Mm.
Right, that's right. I was reading what Holly has been writing.
Yes, so I'm reading Holly's
The
comments.
lies are still, I think, and Holly said in a chat way back that the voting still counts. And I'm gonna just say, what you said about people demonstrating and getting together in groups, that it's a generational thing. My generation is much more upset right now than a lot of other people who are busy taking care of children and working at their jobs. My generation across the board, my friends, my relatives, we can't get up in the morning and without feeling depressed, because we can watch this and see this in real time.
Right.
And we don't have the energy to get out and march and assemble. The voting counts and getting rid of the lies and debunking the lies. And I'm going to tell you, the one thing that matters is education. And that is what Trump is trying to take away from us. Culture, education, all the things that make a wise electorate. And that is what we have a big problem. That's why you don't have a band. That's why you take money from Johns Hopkins and every other university and research. You end culture and you end education, and you have an electorate that believes the lies. So there's some ways that we have to counter it. I don't know. I can only define what I see.
Well, and one of
Amen,
one of
amen.
the things about that is really clear, and it was at the I posted the Ezra Klein show that I was listing. I try to give sources when I cite them in the chat. The pollster said that all of the research in this shows that the educational divide is not just American, worldwide,
Yeah.
is greater than ever.
Yes.
That
Absolutely.
the more the difference in voting tendencies among people with more education and less education is vaster and more defined than ever.
And
Mhm.
more so with those countries with bad players, like Hungary, like Turkey. These people are ending a lot of the educational benefits more and more.
And we're
Exactly,
following suit now.
and
We're-
we are, and we are.
But we've talked about this. Education in this country, public education in this country, has always been an African-American cause and a women's cause.
Mm.
Because so my mother gets me to read books that I wouldn't normally read, or because she is my source for recommendations. So thank you. So I reread Huck Finn in order to read James. And so for those of you who know those two books, one of the things that Huck Finn hammers home is the degree to which the Southern white person thought education was irrelevant.
Yes.
Not for Black people, but for themselves.
Selves.
That education for a Southern white person in the 1800s was viewed as a liability because it was time spent wasted
When you could be working in the fields
or hunting or
yes,
doing something
yes.
useful. That
Yep.
usefulness was not learning.
Right. Right.
And and this was something resetting into place for me, the degree to which learning is in fact countercultural to American culture.
Yes, it is.
That yes, the elite have always pursued learning, but white majority American culture does not believe that learning is worthwhile. And we see that all the more so now. So that we now have an anti-expertise culture. We have, right, they took down pictures of the Enola Gay.
Because the word gay was in it.
Right, because the word gay was in it at the Department of Defense.
You laugh to keep from crying. Yeah. I mean, and let's be real. Education has always been considered a privilege in this country, not a right. It's always been a privilege. And so only the privileged, only the elite were ever meant to go to school. They were only meant to be educated, while everyone else was meant to have a manual job or to be a laborer. And so this idea, especially when African Americans wanted to go to school, how dare you want to go to school? Why would you want to go to school? You can make so much money doing this, this, and this. And so now, but see that flipped. Now education is not what it used to be. I remember when I was in school, when I was in high school, my mother told me that if you get your degree, if you get your bachelor's degree, you can write your own ticket in life. You're gonna nothing but clear skies after that. Get your degree, get your degree, get your degree. By the time I got my doggone degree, a bachelor's degree meant trash. It couldn't get me a single flipping job. I had to get a master's degree. Then by the time I got my master's degree, it meant squat. And so, there's this, you're chasing education because they've moved the goalposts. Now, the African-American woman is the most educated demographic in the country. And yet, she still can't get the same jobs that people of lesser education. You see what I'm saying?
Well, can't get the same pay. Right?
Can't get the same pay.
Pay is not equalized.
Right.
The education differential is still there.
Right.
Right. Somebody with a high school degree, well, it's still the same racial
Yes.
education differential.
Yeah.
Right. So a Black person with a college degree, a Black man with a college degree still earns less on average than a white man with a high school degree.
Exactly.
Not even going into the gender inequality in this. So clearly African-American women want to get college educated because it's so much better than not, even if it's still less than others.
Right.
And again, we see this across the board,
Yep.
right? That there's so the And now, of course, the real differential is how much money you come from.
That's it.
Right? So somebody who starts out in the upper 20% of American society will likely end up in the upper 20% of American society more than ever. And somebody in the bottom 80% has almost zero chance of leaving the bottom 80%. Yes,
Yep.
Elizabeth. Oh, you're saying goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. And we only have 5 more minutes.
Thank you.
So I wanted to at least give a little bit of more of a word to Timothy Snyder, because his conclusion in this chapter is worth looking at. Since while it is not my job to be a pedagogue, there are some good words here.
Where do we start?
So this is the pages 182 to 183. It's the last. Oh no, sorry. I wanted to go all the way back to the end. Okay. It's 193 to 194. So this is free speech, because I think it's really important. Some Americans seem to think that defending freedom of speech just means saying the words free speech over and over, like an incantation. Too often our free speech, quote unquote, debates involve practiced provocateurs yelling free speech right after saying something they know to be untrue and obnoxious. And right before hustling back behind the tinted windows of limousines for the next gig paid for by the discreet oligarch. These everyday trivializations of an important idea demand that we think carefully about how we speak of this fundamental right. If it becomes one more cliche, losing its sense and meaning, the thing itself will wither. You want to continue, Pastor?
The very phrase free speech, though we say it all the time, gets us on the wrong track. It suggests that speech is what is oppressed and what is to be liberated. That is incorrect. There is no speech without a lieb, without a person. Speech is not oppressed. People who speak are oppressed. Speech cannot be liberated. People must be liberated so that they can speak. Freedom of speech means nothing without free speakers. Only people can take risks. Only people can be free.
Right, and we've talked about the importance of speaking the truth to power. Freedom of speech for people means safe circumstances in which to express oneself and an opportunity to learn so as to have something to say, which means access to journalism, access to science, access to education. The Declaration of the First Amendment that the government shall, quote, make no law abridging the freedom of speech, unquote, is meaningless without the accommodations needed to create free speakers.
How then to establish the structures that produce free speakers? Affirming truth, though necessary, is not enough. Even generating facts, though indispensable, is not enough. We do not have the natural capacity to distinguish truth from lies, or even an inborn preference for facts over fiction. We need the forms of freedom, sovereignty, unpredictability, mobility to become free speakers and good listeners. Getting at the truth requires determined and cooperative work. Factuality, in other words, depends on solidarity.
We can't do it alone.
Can't do it alone.
And this is the purpose of our meetings, which is figuring out how we do not just what we do, but how we do it together better. Because the solidarity piece reminds us again, we are not free if you're free and I'm not.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We are not sharing, as Holly pointed out, a fact universe if we don't actually work together to build the universe in which facts can be recognized. We need to do this together. We need to test out each other's ideas together. That's why we have laboratories in science, because we do a test, and it's why we have peer reviews in science, because we have to replicate the test to show that it actually proves something. Well, we have the same thing in society. There's a whole field, one that I really love, called collaborative governance, which says that I can't take my good idea and use it to help other people unless those other people participate in making it a good idea, right? Or as Reverend Denise likes to say, nothing about us without us is for us. Nothing about us without us is for us. We can only do something for one another when we do it with one another. The preposition makes a difference for those of you grammar geeks out there. So with that, I want to thank all of you for showing up. And physically, all of you metaphysically.
Mm,
And
Thank you, thank you,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for all of you who are supporters of Accomplices for Justice and Open Door Judaism. Thank you to, of course, Humanities New York and the Buffalo History Museum for making this possible. And you can find us and all of our episodes at www.opendoorjudaism.org. That's Open Door Judaism spelled in Oxford English Dictionary spellings of those words.org. And because without any umlauts or anything. And if you'd like to support what we're doing, you can also click support us at opendoorjudaism.org, which gets you a select exclusive invitation to our weekly half-hour conversations where we continue to have talk like this.
Yes.
Only it's just the two of us, and you get to listen in live if you are a material supporter. And they all end up on YouTube and podcasts as well. If you have any questions, email us. You can again
Yes.
find all of our contact information at opendoorjudaism.org. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will see you next week. Our session 5 is next week, same time, 5:30, Tuesday, March 25th. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Wishing all of you all the best. Thanks again.